Hi, it's Valeska. I'm here at the Mansfield Training Center with Arlington Mansfield Area YMCA. We have a half hour of yoga, or a Yin Yoga class. Yin Yoga is a little different from maybe some of your other flow type of yoga classes you might have taken. Yin focuses on the connective tissues, the tendons, the ligaments, the lining, the fascia of all of our organs and muscles. So what we do is, rather than having a quick flowing practice, these are tissues that respond to slow, cooler, longer holds. We don't want to be all heated. The cooler muscles do very well in this respect. It's just a different type of exercise. When we hold poses for a slightly longer period of time, trying to relax the muscles, we get deeper into those connective tissues and help the muscles and the tissues slide easier so that it creates a freer range of motion. It tends to help with tightness in different joints. It can be a really lovely meditative practice as well, so really nice for the mind and the heart as well as the body. Anytime we get into something that doesn't feel good to you or hurts, please back off. We do talk about an edge. That means that place where you feel like you are doing something, but you haven't gone into any pain or discomfort or a sense of something being wrong. Anytime you get to that place, just back out or try one of the other options. Yin is a very malleable kind of program so that you can adapt it to what feels right for you. Every body is different. We want you to have a good practice and feel better at the end of it than you did at the beginning. We start with a little bit of quiet. If you have something to sit on, a mat or a little blanket or even a block, if that helps, you don't have to have the legs folded. They can be out in front of you, or you could lie flat. We want a pose that you can be in for just a minute or two, a pose that doesn't hurt, so that you can focus on the mind, on the body, and preparing yourself for your yoga practice. It's also a time now to maybe set an intention for your practice. Maybe you want the mental benefit of reducing anxiety, or maybe you're focused on hips or something that aches. So think about that and bring your attention back to it when your mind wanders, which it will always do to a certain degree throughout your practice. If you're seated, take a tall seat with the crown of the head rising upwards. Think about the tailbone rooting straight down. We have this long, tall column of the spine. Think about taking those shoulders up and rolling them back so that you are open across the chest. Seat, anchored down to the floor. The legs are at ease. Weight of gravity is just gently drawing them toward the floor. If you're good with closing the eyes, do so. Or let your gaze go soft. Hands can rest on the knees or in the lap. Focus on the breath. Observe how you're breathing. If you can, breathe in and out through the nose. And see if you're breathing shallowly, like more in the chest, or whether you can breathe more deeply down into the lungs. If it's possible, take that breath as deep as you can into the lungs so that you might feel a lift of the heart, an opening of the ribs, and maybe a slight rise of the belly. And as you exhale, make it a full exhalation so the belly slightly draws in, the ribs compress, and you might feel the heart descend. Breathing in deep. Exhale fully. Take a few more breaths like this. Just envision breathing in all the way to the base of your lungs. And then breathing all of that air out. 2 more times. Full inhalation. Complete exhalation. And last time. Breath in. And breathe out any tension. From here, on your next exhale, just let the chin come toward the chest. Feel the back of the neck stretch. You might roll your left ear toward your left shoulder, slide the shoulders down. Take a round of breath, feel the side of the neck open. And then slowly roll your chin on the exhale to center and inhale, right ear to right shoulder. Exhale, the shoulder blades down. And again, take some breath here. Feel the left side of the neck open. And slowly exhale back to center. And inhale to level. If you like, just take the legs out in front. Roll and tap for a moment. Maybe rotate ankles. Both directions. You might bend the knees. Just drop the knees side to side. Maybe roll the hip a bit. So while our Yin class is a series of longer holds without a whole lot of motion, we do integrate some of that energy, that Yang practice by moving things, getting the blood flowing. I'm going to come around to table. If you need some padding under your knees, a blanket is really nice, or if you have a pad or a mat, you can kind of fold it and put it under the knees as well. We're going to start in what I'm going to call a wide child, or also known as tadpole. If you can, take your knees as wide as you're comfortable going. If you have a hard floor, you're really going to want some padding under those knees. I'm going to need to spread my blanket a bit. The wider your knees go, the more challenge it's going to be. So that the toes come together and the heels might come apart. And you can sink the hips back. Slowly, maybe move yourself chest toward the floor. If this is a bit much, you feel free to lie on your back and come into a reclined cobbler or butterfly. Model here for a moment. So what this will do is keep some of that pressure off of the hips. You could be right here, and this would be just fine. Otherwise, try sinking your weight back into the heels. You could put a block in front of you to support yourself, or start to sink the chest and the forehead. As you breathe out, think about softening into areas that are tight. So you might notice in the hips, or maybe it's the low back for you, or perhaps it's along the shoulders or neck. Try to breathe out and soften whatever feels tense or tight, so that each round of breath is kind of melting the muscles, any tension in the body. And then you will target, you'll end up getting more into those deeper connective tissues that we were talking about. So in just a moment, I'm going to give you the option of either staying as you are or intensifying the pose a little bit. If you would like to go deeper, you might shift your weight a bit forward. And rather than having the toes come together, see if you can take your heels out behind your knees. This is full frog. Widen the knees as much as you're comfortable going, and then press the hips back until you feel some tension in those hips. Might not have to go that far. Option then would be to start dropping the chest back down toward the floor. So anywhere along the way is not a bad place to be. You could also be on your back, keep that butterfly pose, or if you wanted to try more of a happy baby with your feet toward the ceiling, like you're doing a squat on the ceiling, that would work too. take a few more breaths here. So if you're in this full frog, see if you can get your elbows under your shoulders, maybe your hands underneath. Slowly take your feet in and slide one knee in and then the other. You might feel good doing some hip circles, or if you just want to shift your hips side to side, or if there's something else that feels good to you, go ahead and go there. And if you're circling, just make sure to go the other direction as well. And then we're going to come onto our front. So work your way when you are lying on your belly, and you can stack your forearms and rest your forehead on top of your forearms. You might even let the toes come together, heels apart. And this can be a resting position that also gives you some very small extension of the spine, a lengthening here. If you'd like to do more, which we can always do, you can start to lift your chest away from the floor and then take your elbows a little bit closer under your shoulders. Reach out with your feet and rest on the tops of your feet. See if you can relax your glutes and your hamstrings, your low back, and lift your chest forward. If you are not comfortable with the hands crossed here, you can have the hands straight forward. There is a lot of variation here as to what feels good to people in this pose. Some people are very happy coming straight into something more intense, or some people find this to be very challenging. The more you move your elbows forward, the closer your chest can come to the floor, the less intense this pose will be. So anytime it gets to be too much, adapt it so that it is something that works for you. You could even put a block in front of you if you'd like to rest your head on it. If you would like to go deeper into a spinal extension here, only if you would like, lengthen your arms. Now you can also play with how wide those hands are, maybe further out the spine too. If you need more intensity on the spine, walk the hands further back so that they come closer to underneath your shoulders. You can let the shoulders relax, the neck can hang if that feels okay to you, or simply keep the gaze in front so the neck feels at ease. Again, be mindful what your body is telling you. If you've all of a sudden tightened up certain parts, see if you can relax them. Let's take a few more rounds of breath. And then we're going to slowly just bend the elbows, gradually bring the ribs to the floor. Turn your head in one direction. And slide your knee across the floor to about hip height. And let the low back relax. Take a few breaths. And then extend the leg out behind you. And if you need a bit more release, you can just kind of windshield wiper the feet back and forth and help you relax that low back. From here, we're going to come into a swan pose, which is pretty much the same pose as pigeon in a yang style class, but the intention is a little different, so it gets a different name. We're going to be working in some deeper connective tissues here. I'll show you the version here that I'm going to do and then give you another possibility if this doesn't look right for you. You can take one knee forward, comes between the hands, and then slide that heel. You can either stay right underneath the glute. So if you have your right knee forward, right heel can be under right glute, or it can come off to the left. Some people are very flexible here in their hip and they can take their shin parallel to the front of their mat. A lot of people, that is not entirely possible. And plus you don't want to make the knee be compromised by taking the brunt of the force if the hip is tight. So just let the leg find its place. And then scoot your back extended leg out behind you. Now I have a hip that not entirely sitting on the floor. I could prop it up with a blanket, or maybe I would put a block underneath the hip. You could be up tall if this feels good to you, or gradually take your chest to the floor and sink yourself down. If you're saying this is really not for you because it affects your knee and your hip joint, or maybe your back, come onto your back. Take your right ankle on top of your left knee and just roll this right knee out. And options to hold underneath your thigh or on the shin. And take that leg closer toward your chest till you feel some tension in that outer right hip. So this is a really nice option. It gets you that stretch, but it doesn't put the weight from your body onto the joints. We'll take another minute or so here. Try to let go as much muscle tension as you can. You can be propped up or just relaxed toward the floor. It depends what feels right to you. Take another breath or two. And slowly work your way up. And shift your weight onto your right hip. You can bring your left leg forward. And your right leg. And just roll it back. And then extending your right leg, see if you can take your left knee on top of your right leg. If this doesn't feel right, you can take your leg further out, or you could even prop it with a block. This is a shoelace variation. Another option is to, if you don't want to keep this leg long, is to bend the knee and take it where the heel is outside the hip. So left leg on top, right leg underneath. Either a stack or maybe more toward a cross-legged version. Take that tall posture. Either sit nice and tall like this, or if you want to fold gradually. With folding, keep a long spine. If you have anything going on in the back that you need to be careful about. Otherwise, if you need some extra stress in the back, you can gradually allow that spine to round. You can also put something in front of you to support yourself. You might find that edge changing for you as you hold the pose. Maybe the body lets go a little bit, and you can take that extra quarter inch or whatever it gives you. Or perhaps you found that you might have gone a bit too deep, so listen to that as well and pull out if you need. You don't get any benefit from going into pain in this kind of a practice. Give it another couple breaths. If you are folded, take an inhale, the chest first, walk the hands back, let them support you from behind, and slowly unwind the legs. Might feel good to do a little side to side. Or maybe just extend and tap. We're going to come to the other side, so if you know that you'd rather be either seated or on your back with this version of swan, it could be like an eye of the needle pose here, remember? And just because you did one thing on one side doesn't mean it has to be the same on the other. Body sides are different, right? Injuries, accidents, just different ways we use the body or just the way the body is formed. Left knee comes forward. That foot can either stay underneath the hip, under the glute, or it can move off toward the other side. And then slowly walk your other leg back. So if my hip were not sits on the floor here, I could use a little bit of extra padding underneath, so that my hip is supported and is not floating in space. Because anything that kind of floats in space is requiring some support from you. The less you can have to support various parts of your body, the more you can relax into the pose and gain the benefit of the practice. You can be in a standing swan, back leg extended, toe pointing straight out behind you, just relaxing. See if you can avoid too much, if possible, rolling onto the hip. You'll get a bit more effect out of it by trying to roll your right hip to the floor if that left knee is forward, or at least so that the hips are level. But if that doesn't work for you and you don't have a padding, don't worry so much about it. Option here is to come back down, chest toward the floor. Give it another couple breaths. And inhale to lift away from the floor. Walk the hands back. Maybe roll onto that left hip and slide your right hip forward. Creak, crack. Extend your legs out. Tap. And then see if you can take your right knee and cross it over your left. If it does not want you to lie flat, you can put a blanket, you can pad it, you can put a block underneath the hip. This gives a really nice stretch to the back of the leg. You could simply be seated here. Again, option, have the knee out to the side. Or you could even use a wall. Take your seat against the wall, take your left leg up, and then cross the right leg over. That helps sometimes too. Another option is to take your left foot and bend the knee and take it to the outside of your hip. So we're not seated on our heels. We can be lovely tall here with our posture and our spine, or we can again fold forward if that is something that works for you. Each pose is going to feel a little different on different sides. When we practice in sometimes with classes at the Yin, at the Y, when we do a Yin class, we will have a class for an hour, sometimes even an hour and a half. Poses can be held from 1 minute, if that's what feels right to you. Generally 3 minutes, or sometimes much longer, more like 5 or 6. You have to kind of work up to that sometimes. But you have options if you do this at home. You can always pause the program and hold the pose as long as you like. From seated, let's just take one long rise of breath, reach tall, and envision taking grace to mind, heart, and body. We close our practice with a phrase that means, the light in me honors that light in each of you, which unites us all. The word we say is namaste. Namaste. Hope you all stay well. Thank you.